I'm delighted to be here with you and all of you. Again, thank you for joining us for what will surely be a very meaningful discussion about the one and only Ralph Lauren and his enduring impact on fashion. Today marks the official launch of the book, Ralph Lauren Catwalk. This volume is an extraordinary and comprehensive record of Ralph's creative journey, beginning with his debut women's collection in 1972. The publication also marks a historic milestone for the Catwalks book series, as Ralph Lauren is the first ever American fashion house to be featured in partnership with Ames and Hudson. So congratulations on that incredible milestone. That is very deserving, I may add. I'm extremely honored to be in conversation with this formidable group of individuals, many of whom are my friends and my colleagues. I'm going to begin with introducing the great Bridget Foley. Renowned journalist and fashion critic, former executive editor of Womenswear Daily, and author of this incredible book that I encourage you all to have a look at and read. Tyler Mitchell, artist, photographer, and filmmaker, whose singular lens has reshaped the visual language of American fashion, I think. My friend and former colleague, Erin Walsh, a highly regarded and sought after celebrity stylist and creative director, whose clients include Anne Hathaway and Selena Gomez, and who is about to also publish her first book.
Wait, Samira refers to me as her colleague, but she was actually my boss.
I was.
Very lovely boss.
Iman, icon.
What?
So today is a great day. And last but not least, I'd love to introduce Jalil Johnson. He's the creator of Substack, Consider Yourself Cultured, and an incredible fashion writer whose work has been featured in Harper's Bazaar, which I'm very proud of, New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. So welcome to all of you. Bridget, I want to begin with you. As part of writing this book, you had the opportunity to work with Ralph Lauren and his design and archive teams, revisiting images from every show he has done since 1972. And I'd love to see, could you tell us a little bit about that process and what that was like?
The process was incredible. It was, at the time, from start to when we finished, to when we wrapped the book, 53 years of Ralph Lauren shows. That's a tremendous amount of work, and it was a tremendous amount of research. The library and archive, I cannot overstate, they are incredible. The wealth of information, not only the wealth of information, but the wealth of help and the generosity when I needed it, when I had, either a mundane, a really, sort of persnickety question or a really stupid question. They were just so gracious and so wonderful. And this incredible world was open to me. And the process for me, I have covered Ralph for a very long time. So I've been there for probably half of his shows, and I've covered him, in the show context and beyond the show context. So for me, it was very much a process of discovery and rediscovery and evaluation and reevaluation, and then looking at it all together. As a fashion critic, as a journalist, yes, of course you do contextual pieces, but when you're doing a show, it's very much this show and then, another show of the season and then on to the next season. So you connect the dots, but to do so in such an intense, acute manner, I knew, of course, Ralph Lauren is a creative genius and a cultural genius, but to see it and distill it all in such a finite period of time was really fascinating.
I just have one. So I imagine that you would know everything about Ralph Lauren, right? You've covered him for decades, but when going through the process, did you come out learning something that you didn't know?
Oh my God, yes, of course. Number one, the things that, that I knew, or that I knew a lot, I thought I knew a lot, but it was really amazing to see from the beginning, with so much that we hear about Ralph Lauren, the authenticity. That is a word that has become marketing speak. It is not marketing speak from Ralph Lauren.
Right.
The the ideas, the themes that he loved, that he championed early on, you can go through and you can see the through lines. You can see, oh, this is where this started, or that's where that went. And you can also see how they progressed culturally and how he evolved them.
Right.
And so that was really amazing to really, the surprise was in seeing how brilliantly he has stayed true to himself while advancing, which is the hardest thing, as you know, for any designer to do, right?
Yeah.
And to do it over the course of now almost 60 years is incredible.
It is incredible. I want to talk a little bit about image and representation because those things really matter to me. And I really believe that Ralph Lauren, the man, allowed for a lot of us to see ourselves in his American dream. And I really give him so much credit. And so I just want to ask you, Iman, you walked your first show in 1979.
Yep.
And I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about that experience.
I arrived in '76 straight from Kenya to New York to be a model. And I've never worn heels or makeup in my life before I got here. I was majoring in political science, so I have never even heard of magazines of fashion or anything of that matter. So working with him, what I definitely remember that made, after through all the years, I retired from modeling in 1989, and I've worked with almost all the designers. But one thing that is very clear about Ralph Lauren is that whenever I would go for a fitting for the collections, he always was very gentle with me. You know, he knew that I was still, because in '79 I was barely in America for a couple of years. So he was very gentle with me. But one thing also is very clear that he was different from other designers through the years was that he's never talked to you about fashion, right? He'll talk to you about your family, what's going on around the world, what's happening in America. He talked to you as a human being. He's never asked me about a trend, a fashion, what are you wearing? Nothing. Nothing. It has always been that. And that's what I really appreciate about his longevity, because I think I'm an American citizen, but you can hear it from my voice, I'm still rooted in Africa. And when I travel, most of the world know America. So Ralph Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You know, and he was able to connect the Wild West with old New York, you know, Ivy League culture with jazz at the same time, you know, the Wild West, you know, with Hollywood glamour, you know, so, you know, the world knows America through his eyes.
Yeah.
Right? And when it comes to diversity and that, he's never looked at it that way.
Right.
Because he said to me, I can put, you know, sneakers on you, I can put a prairie dress on you, and you still have this elegance that you brought from Africa, right? So he always saw the person rather than what fashion was about. Right? And that's, to me, it's what his relevance, why he's still relevant today, because of that, you know, because he doesn't follow fashion. Because you could see what I love about the book is that it's in this world where everybody has a camera and there's pictures everywhere, you never see a book like this nowadays.
Yeah.
And you see it from the first collections to the last collections, you see the weaving in it. And you see why he's permanent and why he's relevant.
Absolutely. Tyler, when were you first aware of Ralph Lauren? And what did it mean for you when you first discovered it?
We talked a little bit.
Yeah, I know, and it was so good, so I want you to tell them.
It's hugely synonymous with how I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I think Southern culture and Ralph Lauren are like synonymous in a way also, and I like this connection of all these like aspects and geographies of American life. But I mean, there is only one polo shirt, and so going to school from third grade on, you know, with the dress code in my school to be always a polo shirt or a collared shirt, largely a polo shirt. This was like an arena where, as a kid in school, we are like kind of freaking and playing with this shirt because that's our space of expressivity. Is like what color combination you have. What do you have? The big horse? Do you have the small horse? And but I really like this was a huge like arena of expressivity where to have a Polo Ralph Lauren shirt, to have Ralph Lauren clothes was a huge, huge, huge coveted thing for me. But beyond that, the world itself was a hugely immersive visual experience. I think it woke me up to, creativity itself in a lot of ways, in a very late and early stage of life. I think there was that world and those textures that come through in the runways, but also were there in mall culture in Georgia. And
Right.
I think I've always understood Ralph for myself to be this thing that can be interpreted by others as well. I think I'm really fascinated by that I was really seeing growing up in Atlanta, how people in Georgia were interpreting the world that he brought, and that there seemed to be a feedback loop that he was aware of in that. But anyway.
But also how people felt included in that conversation, right? Like, you could be from Georgia, you could be from Vermont, you could be from Maine. I'm in Canada and Montreal, and I'm like, it's for me too, right?
Yeah,
like,
attainable. He made it attainable. It is what American dream is, that you aspire to.
But it's also for you.
But it's for everybody. Yeah.
What about you, Jalil? When did you first?
I would say my first memory of Ralph is really in the mall. I grew up in a really small town in Southern Virginia, and so the mall was kind of the window of a pocket of life outside of that small town. And I just have a distinct memory of seeing the shop in shop, the wood paneling and the array of shirts and all the colors, and just wanting to be a part of that world and just dreaming of being in that world. And I was talking to Bridget about this, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ralph Lauren was the first American brand to really pioneer this idea of the shop in shop, which is, I think, just speaks to his qualities of being so ahead of time, of the game and everything like that. So I think that was like my real pocket of
awareness of,
awareness
of the world of Ralph Lauren.
And I think also, speaking again with what Tyler was talking about, having a piece of Ralph Lauren, especially growing up, meant something. And I really coveted those pieces. And when I really got into thrifting, finding a piece of Ralph Lauren was the holy grail.
Yes.
Like what we were all looking for.
I know. It still is.
It still is.
And I just have to complete it now. Erin, what about you? When did you?
Well, there's so many years of this. It's like, I'm thinking of last summer with my boys, and like the one thing they want is the pony shirt.
Yeah.
They're like, it's such a, for me, my relationship with the brand has always been bigger than the brand. It's been like this encompassing, romantic, aspirational, but attainable joy. And I've always just felt that. You feel it when you walk in, you feel it in an engagement. I mean, even us all walking here together and seeing each other, it's just like, you can feel it. And the whole point is what everybody's been saying, is that connective tissue of fashion at its best, which he always harnessed, and he always made it a democratized luxury for everyone. And it's always that. It's so much bigger than the clothes. And I just loved watching that story.
What you just said, and someone mentioned dreams, and you mentioned aspiration.
Yeah.
Those words are so key and so essential to the Ralph Lauren ethos and to the way he lives his life. And what's really interesting about he's always said, it's a very interesting dichotomy. One of the tenets of Ralph's approach of his work is contradiction. So you think dreams and reality, and that's the tenets are manifest in the clothing and sort of rugged, refined, masculine, feminine, but there are bigger than that. And there is, when you say aspiration, it's not aspiration in the sense of, the way fashion uses it often, I'm going to trade up to a more expensive coat.
Yes.
It's aspiration in terms of aspiring to the kind of life that Ralph Lauren believes we can live. And it sounds corny, but it's not. When you see the visual imagery is about optimism, it's about hopefulness, it's about community and getting together. And I think that's one of the reasons I think that Ralph is resonating so powerfully today, because of the way we live. And he really does have, at the core of his work, is the concept of a life well lived from the inside out. And I think that's really, really essential. And again, it's not shtick. That is who Ralph Lauren is. When you meet him, when you said that about him, I've actually been interviewing him sometimes, and it's, okay, Ralph, but I would really like to talk about the fashion a little bit. Because he wants, how's your family? That's really who he is as a human being, and that is manifested, and it has manifested across almost 60 years.
And that's why it lasts.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
I was so fascinated by when we had a like sort of briefing call together, which was really lovely, and we were talking about the Catwalk series itself and how the other designers in the series, you know, you have Prada, you have Chanel, you have, I would assume, Dior, you have this sort of class of the sort of European greats, so to speak, and now you have Ralph Lauren. And what does that mean? And it was interesting that, of course, he deserves to be absolutely in that conversation with those people, but also in a way his world saw right through that, in a sense. I think it felt in a way bigger than that he was sort of this bright shining light that was obsessed with the woman as a human being, totally beyond just what he might do with the silhouette or the dress, but also what her house looks like, what her family is like, what sports she's interested in, what activities she likes to do. That seems to be what I feel, at least from it, and I loved that.
But I
brought that up.
I would say, it brings me to my next thing that I want to talk about, which is the risk taker, right? Like, I think, you know, when I was watching that video right now that you all saw before we came out, you know, he was such a pioneer. Like, obviously his first design was the tie. You know, I hope we all know that story that, you know, he was frustrated that he couldn't find the tie that was the right proportion, so he created it himself. But then in 1972, he creates his first womenswear collection, which was menswear for women. Like, it's like everything I want every day. And he's inspired by the love of his life, Ricky. But then he goes on, and it's like he took all these risks and changed what could be on the runway. And to get back to like all those other houses, they're all showing denim now and separates now and sport. But he did that first. And I was hoping, you know, Bridget, you could talk a little bit about the risk taker and the pioneer.
We think of Ralph as being a classicist, and he is, and that's another one of the contradictions, but he was a risk taker. He is a risk taker and a pioneer and a renegade. The whole tie story, I mean, he, you know, as a kid, he said no to Bloomingdale's. No, I won't make my ties thinner. No, you can't put your own label in them. And that's really where it started. But there are so many things, all of the things that you just talked about. I mean, Ralph, one of the things that is so incredible about him is that he is culturally so prescient. We talk about lifestyle. I think Ralph is the only genuinely complete lifestyle luxury brand.
Yes.
In the 70s, right, and in the 80s, the runway was really about, you know, polished clothes, as in polished day and evening, and that was it. Ralph Lauren came along with this lifestyle concept before lifestyle was, again, a thing, a word that everybody talked about. He elevated clothes for utilitarian purposes, clothes for everyday life, to runway worthiness, whether it was, you know, work clothes, denim. I mean, we think of that. There's a sort of a thought process in fashion that is a runway discovery of the 21st century. It was not. Ralph Lauren was doing it and putting it on the runway in the 70s and in the 80s. And for example, a huge thing, he foresaw the fitness revolution. And he, not only did he, from the very, very beginning, first with the British equestrian inspiration, but then far more, you know, rugged interpretations, clothes inspired by sport, but also clothes performance wear.
Right.
And he deemed those, yes. Right. And he deemed those worthy to put on the runway. So that was completely, I mean, no one else was doing that at the time. You saw Bridget Moynihan on rollerblades on the runway. That was shocking.
I mean, even talking about the simple things that you mentioned about that everybody now, every designer has a denim on the runway. I mean, Yves Saint Laurent said famously when he was asked what is one garment that he would have loved to have created, and he said the T-shirt. Right? I mean, it can't be more democratic than that. And we all know, every man I know, including my husband, covets a Ralph Lauren antique vintage T-shirt. That's what it is on the Christmas wish list, right? And you know, the clothes, when we see people are buying new clothes all the time, actually, his clothes always looked like they were already worn.
Well, there's that amazing quote, hold on, where he's like, my clothes look better, what is the next year? Like, they'll look better next year than they will this year. Like,
another thing, Ralph Lauren was onto sustainability.
Yeah, it's so good.
And this is when he was, you know, 28 and 29 and 30 years old. He said, I want my clothes to look better next year than this year. And he talked about, you know, generational transfer of clothes from mother to daughter to granddaughter. And he also, one of the things he brings, one of the examples he would always use, you know, a sweater gets a hole in the elbow. You patch it. You don't get rid of it. This was revolutionary stuff in 1978.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it still kind of feels like the sort of stuff that designers still like create an affectation around, but don't have the authentic love for that you feel from him.
Yeah, what I love, especially reading the intro to the book, is every move Ralph made was so natural to him. Like him designing the women's line because Ricky designing children's lines because he had children, going into home because he was developing these homes. Like everything was not meant to match into like this whole plan, whereas I feel like so many brands are like, oh, I need to make a bag, I need to make a perfume. Right. It just fell and stepped into his own life.
Intention, right? Like it's thoughtful and it's intentional. And maybe that's his...
And one thing I've always felt about him is that sense of optimism.
Yeah, you talked about that earlier. Can you talk a little more about that?
Really something about optimism about him. Whatever happens, the cultural change, the upheavals, he always had hope, optimism, and the yearning for permanence.
Yeah.
Something that is permanent. And when I think about it today, I think this is exactly what we all cherishing and wanting, is something that is permanent. And that's what he had. He always had that. And at times when you look at the book, what you see is that you might not see like what the European designers do, a big dress, taffetas everywhere, and that. But what you see is the permanence. You see something that started in 79 and shows up again in 89 and shows up again in 2009. And that is the beauty of Ralph.
I love that word though, permanence, because it also, permanent doesn't mean not evolving. It's something that shifts and bends over time. And watching that as a testament to like why his authenticity, it's something that he was able to flex and pivot and listen and be a conscious, absorber and interpreter of culture, and why people love what they wear and how it serves them and all of it. There was one other thing I saw in the video that I just thought to be so like, I wanted to get in my skin. And it was just that idea that the ordinary is not enough. Like, why be ordinary when every moment of your life, if you allow it, can be extraordinary? And he imbued that into every single piece and story, and it's just so, like, thank you for that. Like, it was so beautiful.
Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to collaborate with Ralph for red carpet or like, VIP dressing? Can you give us a little bit about what that process is
absolutely. Like? It's, like how I've described how I see him, it's been a pure labor of love. And the word labor I use lightly because it's just been joy. And there's been so many giant moments that, with people like Anne Hathaway or like Selena, you just see them like get absorbed. And what I think is so cool about them though is like the resonance. It's not necessarily like, again, evolving and changing, but the ideas that have been presented are from a foundation of making these women feel like the best version of themselves and absolutely beautiful and radiant and, shining to the world so that people, when they look up to them, can see themselves, see their own possibility. And in terms of working with the team, it's just like, it's a bit Willy Wonka in terms of what would you like? And certainly on like iconic occasions like someone's wedding that, millions of people are going to be looking at in a very big way. I think starting from that point of intention, how do we use design to honor the beauty and the legacy and the story here? And it's just been such a privilege, really.
Jalil is someone who writes a lot about fashion and style, and also about someone who brings a lot of, to quote Erin, intention into how you dress. Like, where do you see Ralph Lauren now, and how do you see him sort of, and the clothes fit in sort of that landscape of style and individuality?
I would say it's kind of the foundation. I think about all the mood boards I've seen where Ralph himself is on there, or Ralph collections there. Because the clothes feel so natural. They don't feel like a fantasy or a costume. And I think about my own approach to getting dressed. I relate so much to Ralph because I love movies and referencing the movies, especially, the Hitchcocks and the Audrey Hepburns. Like, I'm fascinated by that world. And I think he also touches on this fact that we are multifaceted and that we're not just tied to one specific style. Like, we've talked about how there are touches of the West, there's touches of Hollywood glamour, there's a little British equestrian, there's prep. There are all these styles within the world of Ralph, and they all coexist. And I think that shows us as when we're getting dressed, we don't have to just fit into a box.
Yeah.
We can really play with all of the crowns in the coloring box. And I think that's my approach when I get dressed. And also something else is when I like look in the mirror, which I think is like the most vulnerable thing that we do every day is like getting up and getting dressed. You have to ask yourself like, who do I want to be today?
Yeah.
And I think that speaks so much to Ralph, and I think he's said something along those lines as well. Yeah. But we get to choose who we want to be. And I think there's a line also in the introduction that says, you know, the clothes don't make the man, but like the clothes are a part of the making of the man. So the clothes are just kind of the vehicle for us to really perform to the person that we want to emulate and aspire to be.
You touched a little bit about the sort of the cinematic idea, and even just looking through, Bridget, like looking through the book and looking through all the collections had actual names, as opposed to like spring, summer, 20, whatever. It's like, you know, they have sporting life, preppy romantic, romantic nomads, an emotional pause. I mean, intro into the woods, beautiful tensions. I mean, that's that's singular as far as
Ralph has said from the beginning he doesn't like the word fashion designer, but he considers himself a storyteller, and he really is. And he views the runway as as his cinema, and he's telling a narrative. And you talk about casting. Yep. He doesn't cast for a look; he casts for a character, and that's how he dresses. That's how he approaches each woman on the runway. And so absolutely he has these flights of fancy, and he was very, very, very deeply influenced by movies when he was a kid. Movies and sports were two huge inspirations. And that's just exactly what you're saying, Jalil. That's how Ralph sort of started to discover himself, is that he would sort of dress for the roles that he wanted to play. And again, that's one of those contradictions. Dressing for a role while being utterly yourself. And those things are contradictory, but not antithetical.
Right.
They really do mesh together, and they mesh together in his world and in the world that he presents to all of us. But it is a totally cinematic approach. And when you go into the stores are not merchandised like stores. They are merchandised like these fabulous settings, whether it's a home setting to make you feel really comfortable. I mean, granted, the Rhineland is a quite lovely home, but, but he's always looked at every item as part of a world. And I think in that regard, sometimes he hasn't gotten his due. This sounds like a ridiculous thing to say because we're talking about Ralph Lauren, but he hasn't always gotten his due as a fashion designer, because the world that he creates and the presentation is so spectacular that people don't always stop to say, wow, those clothes are amazing.
It's like you're in it, you're not watching it.
Exactly, yes. And the craft of the clothes and the thought process behind the clothes, it's really quite remarkable. But because they are manifestations of a larger world, sometimes the nuance gets a little bit lost.
Tyler, what do you think of that sort of idea of the cinematic, and has that impacted you in sort of, like, obviously you work with Ralph Lauren, you've shot campaigns and stuff, but do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I love pictures, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it's clear Ralph does too. I mean, his visual world is just so uniquely singular. And yet it deploys symbols that are familiar to each of us. And that's what makes it connect so universally at the same time. It's clear he watches a lot of movies. It's clear that the worlds are manifestations of a broader cinematic worldview. And I think that should never be to one's detriment. I think there's somehow this strange connotation that dropped out of the air that should detract from the ability to make an amazing garment. I think it adds to it because it's imbued with that richness. And I think there's a beauty in how we all live, which is really, based on those templates of photos, images, and movies that we experienced growing up. It's clear that was the case for him as well. And what I mean by that is actually the way we dress is so defined by movies and by photographs. And that's not to say something judgmental or cynical. Actually, there's a great opportunity for us in that the templates around who we see ourselves as are quite based on things we've seen before. And I think Ralph was so great at taking, twisting, and reinventing those great American symbols that he clearly knew in his vocabulary, or looking at Hitchcock, or looking at certain references that were his. I try to do the same in my own work to whatever varying effects, but to work with Ralph as of recently has been just really, really beautiful. It's been amazing to just even have an opportunity in a small way to interpret in an institution that I respect as greatly as this one. And I would just say the pictures also play such a role, which we know but can't understate, and Ralph knew. I even think about, not to go too off tangent, but I think as much about the catwalk as I do the Architectural Digest pictures.
Yes.
And I think that those I hold in such high esteem because, again, I see someone who is layering their life with those aspects. I mean, the amount of people who you see, this is not to take a dig at anyone, but who design and seem to not wear their design or live in the world of their design is really frequent, actually. And Ralph clearly lived in the world of his design, so I was very thinking about that with
And
photographs.
he makes clothes for the totality of that life.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's such an important thing.
I've always said if there's one closet I could raid, I swear to God, I'll be there in 2 seconds. It would be Ralph's.
I'll take the houses.
And I'll do the cars.
Oh, you'll do the
We can figure that out.
Tyler, I love what you just said about layering your life.
Yeah.
What a beautiful concept.
In the book, Bridget, you write about, and we've touched on this, that the tenets of Ralph's work that emerge over the years: timelessness, utility, and, quote, a soulful underlying optimism. We have to wrap it up soon, but I just want to sort of go around and say, like, Erin, I'm going to start with you. Thinking about these things, why, what makes Ralph, like, why do we still care and still see ourselves in the clothes?
I think it's interesting, after talking about how we absorb his images and his world and all these offerings. I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to be somebody, or we think that, say, fashion is not for us, or even certain lifestyles. But like watching him and what he created, he made it for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's the part of optimism. Like, optimism is inherently inclusive. Hope is not limited; it's limitless. And what he offered us, it will always just leave me in a puddle of tears. Basically, how can you be a cynic when there's just that much optimism? We're all so lucky to have been a part of that.
What about for you, Jalil?
Well, what I think about, especially Gen Z's attraction to Ralph, I think it really speaks to the tenets we've talked about, sustainability. Sustainability is such a big part of how the Gen Z person is shopping. And to quote, use the quote we've been using, Ralph said that his clothes will look better next season. And so I think Gen Z is really wanting to invest in pieces that they can see themselves wearing time and time again. And again, it speaks to, again, what we've talked about, that there is this, I guess the word is permission or allowance for the person to really become who they want to be. They don't have to necessarily fit into this idea or a box that another brand is projecting on them. They can really form this fantasy, or in a sense, or even just fulfill their dreams of, today I'm going to be this person, and that's fantastic. And tomorrow I'll be another person, and that'll be great too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things also, just looking through the book. It's like you always see the woman. It's never a costume.
Never.
You always see the woman. And even, going into the store and seeing, people in the clothes, you always see the person. And I think that's a really remarkable gift to people.
That's one thing that when you look at, we're talking about how, the longevity, and when you find Ralph at vintage or whatever, one of the reasons that I think Ralph's clothes have such resonance and such legs is that they always have been designed, for real life. But when you say always the woman, if you look at the book, he never did some design, and they're really fun. Designers do major statements, major, hair and makeup statements. Often it's very costumey. Ralph has never done that. It's always been about making each model her most beautiful self.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes maybe in the 80s, my thing is, it's really noticeable in the 80s when I think most people got hideous. That's a bias. That is a bias, but you look at the book, and maybe the hair got a little fluffier, the makeup was a little heavier. But they still looked like beautiful, it wasn't all feathered and all of that, the extremes. And so that's the thing, it's always about each person's personal best. And yet he's creating a character on the runway. And I think that's really important. And when you talk about the hope, I think that fashion writ large loves, irony and edge and angst. And that has never been Ralph Lauren's thing. When it's in fashion, it's not his thing. When it's not in fashion, it's not his thing. And I think that especially now, feeling that genuine sense of hope and optimism, people really relate to it.
Yeah. What about you, Iman? What do you think keeps it so relevant and meaningful to people?
I have my own personal quote that I can apply to him. And it's very simple. It is, in a world full of trends, I want to remain a classic.
That's wonderful.
And it's not about being boring. It's not about not changing. It's not about not evolving. It's a classic. It doesn't go out of style, right? And that's what I see. I mean, I can wear that. I can understand you wanting to raid the closet because everything in it, you could still wear it today and tomorrow. And your kids could wear it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think. He's a classic.
He also has the best style.
Yes.
He can actually tuck in a sweater and belt it, and it just so good. The last quote in the book's introduction that actually makes me weepy, and it's quote, "This is not a job, this is a joy. This is what I breathe, it's what I live." Why do I get weepy? Bridget, what is the one thing you want us to all know about Ralph Lauren?
The hope and the optimism and the presentation of this really decent person, that's really who he is. That is not shtick, it's not pretend, it's not marketing. That is who Ralph Lauren is, period, end of story. I want people to come away with the fact that Ralph Lauren is a brilliant designer. I think that we've made a lot. It is very important that he is the first American designer in Catwalk, in the Catwalk series, but I don't want to make too much of that because I think that you talked about the pantheon. It's in the series. There's Chanel and Dior and Yves Saint Laurent and Prada. And yes, Ralph is very, very different, but that is where he belongs in that group. Very, very differently. He got there very differently than the others. I mean, everyone has their own trajectory, but I think that is really the sphere that Ralph Lauren belongs in.
Thank you all.
And he does.
This was so nice. Thank you.